Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and today we've got a bunch of little bits and pieces to tidy up on the 680. So the first job to tackle today is the wheel studs. Now, basically the wheel studs on this car are too short for these wheels and these wheel nuts I've got. They've only got about 50% engagement on the threads inside the wheel nuts. Actually, probably a bit more than that, but either way, they don't come to the end. They're not long enough for what I need. So I went and bought a whole bunch of replacement wheel studs to replace the wheel studs on this car, make sure it all fits. And this wheel obviously is the worst because there happens to be one wheel stud that's actually shorter than the rest. So I can't even bolt a wheel nut onto it anymore. So my first job is to go through and see if I can replace some wheel studs. That's really annoying. So the studs I have, they are the correct thread pitch. They are perfect for what I need. They are the length that I want. The trouble is that the tapered part that goes into the hub, if this will focus, you can see the tapered part that goes into the hub on these studs is much bigger. I tried just grinding this one down a little bit to try and get it to fit, and she's not going to fit. I'll get an unground one. You can, the original one here on the right and the other one on the left, it's not going to fit into my hub. So I'm going to bolt this back up together again and see if I can track down some studs that will actually fit. Urgh! Well, that is super annoying. For starters, having to take the wheel hub off another time. I've had these wheel hubs off since I've replaced the bearing so many times. If I had everything planned out, I could have done everything at once. It would have been so much easier. But in any case, I have to leave that for now. I have to do some tracking down of new wheel studs and see if I can find some that actually fit. I'll have to do a bit more research, any suggestions of the exact right type. Obviously the ones I've got are not quite right. But while I've got the car up in the air, I thought I might go and fix something else that was giving me issues before, and that was the fuel filler. So as many of you might have seen when I was trying to put some fuel into the fuel tank, you will have seen that the fuel filler neck that I have in this car is completely perished and cracked, and if I try and just directly pour fuel in here, it just ends up in a big puddle on the ground. So thankfully, special thanks to Gavin Doolan, who's reached out to me. He's had a spare fuel filler neck that he sent to me, which is fantastic. So thank you very much, Gav. And now all I have to do is actually try and fit it in the car. So let's see if we can get the old one out and get this new one in. First things first, let's get this tyre off. All right, old one is out, new one is here, or new to me one is here. Interestingly, they are slightly different. This one has a loose collar for this second part with like a sort of rubber mounting on it. This one, the collar is part of the lead, the tube, I should say. It is actually slightly shorter than the other one, so hopefully it meets up. But no, it's not much. There's not much in it, so I think it should be fine. Now it's a matter of trying to get this through. This seems to be a much stiffer, harder plastic than this other one. That the issue is the top part here needs to tuck in through the hole. The hole is this lip sits above the hole, and this, so yeah, it's going to be fun trying to weave it up. I might get the heat gun out and try and soften this a bit so I can sort of tuck it up through, because I don't want to damage it. So let's see if I can manipulate this back into place. Should be fun. Well, that was a lot more frustrating than I expected it to be. The issue is that this center section of the tube is too short. So I tried heating it and lengthening it, but basically the flanges on the top of this tube has to go through the fuel filler and through the sort of the body of the car and sit on the outside of this panel. And same with the bit on the bottom. The trouble is it's not long enough for that. I don't know whether they changed this fuel filler section at some stage or with the different car that this is off of, but they are slightly different. So I had to end up putting it in from inside the car here, poke it up there. It's sitting on top down the bottom. But that's the only way I could get it to fit. And trust me, I tried for at least an hour of messing around trying to get this thing in. Now the neck is through. It's time to start putting this fuel tank back in again and bolt it all back together. Alright, it's all tucked back up in here now and reconnected. A good tip, don't do what I did and don't use a heat gun on a fuel tank that's full of fuel. Yeah, do what I say, not what I do, particularly since I'm a firefighter. I should know, I do know that I shouldn't be doing that. I did take reasonable precautions and I did, yeah, but still dumb. Anyway, moving on. So while I've got the car up in the air, the last couple of things I need to button up under here. This exhaust I built, obviously, as you might have seen a few weeks ago. The header section, the fact is that it's all hanging on the headers up the top there. There's no extra braces up along here. And what I want to do is I want to do a hard mounted tab. Because it's hard mounted to the engine and the gearbox is obviously hard mounted to the engine as well. So if I mount it here, it's all solid from the back of the gearbox all the way to the front, and then the back is on rubber mounts to move when the engine moves. So I've got to make a tab for that, and I've also got to just put a bung in the O2 sensor hole, because obviously this car is much older than anything that actually had an O2 sensor, but it's there just in case we want to do some tuning or somebody wants to EFI this or something like that in the future. So let's make a bracket. The little tip with drilling in a piece of rod like this, you're going to make into a bracket. It's much easier to drill it before you bend it or cut it. So do it while it's all in one piece. So the exhaust is looking really good. It's all buttoned up on the car now. So a few of you would have seen a couple of weeks ago, I repainted my wing because I wasn't happy with it. Now I just need to give it a bit of a sand and a buff, particularly on the back. There's just some bits of dust and grit on it that I need to get out of the paint. So I'll give it a bit of sand, a bit of a polish, mount it up. Let's go. Sanding, my favourite. Okay, wing is all polished up, looks nice, much better than it was. Time to refit my 680G badge onto the back here, and the rear end is looking good. So those of you who watched a few weeks ago when I filled up the radiator will have noticed that I had a water leak up here from the top radiator pipe where it meets the engine, basically the top of this thermostat housing here. The hose is done up as tight as I can. It's not the hose. I think the issue is the fact that this old fitting has got a bunch of pitting in it, so that the water's just sort of making its way through the pits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a bit of this steel weld stuff I got from Super Cheap. It's just it's a putty, two-part putty that you mold together, and it essentially hardens like steel. It's designed for use on radiators and things like that. And I mean, this here is just basically smoothing out the pipe. It's not actually doing anything structural. So it's time to pull the hose off and see if I can get this piece nice and smooth. I really don't understand why this didn't hold water. Why it leaked. It doesn't make sense. Go, keep a straight face. No, so obviously this thing is pretty knackered, but I think there's a bit of life left in it, so I'm going to try and patch it up. So I'm just going to clean it up now and then try and smooth it all out and get a nice smooth surface so that the clamp can go on there and hopefully it doesn't leak. All right, that looks much better. I'm going to let that set up. I'll mount it back up on the car, but I will let it set up, and I won't connect the hose up for a couple of days. But that is looking much better. So let's bolt it back in. All right, bolted back on again, looking much smoother. Hopefully that should hold water this time. That is definitely all the time I have today, so I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, a lot of motorsport sees race teams trying to exploit grey areas to their advantage, and sometimes it comes down to downright cheating. An ingenious example which has been used by some NASCAR teams was to run a bigger engine that measured to be smaller. How did they do that, you may ask? Well, they built a V8 engine with some larger cylinder bores and some smaller, ensuring that they were opposed and balanced. The trick being that the engine would sit in the engine bay in such a way that the large cylinders were difficult to get to due to the frame of the car, leading the inspector to measure one of the smaller cylinders and multiply it by 8 times. That, of course, would read much smaller than the actual capacity of the engine. Oh, so funny. Okay, go.
Well, I'm really getting to the pointy end of this build now. down to the fact that I actually really only have wiring to go and the distributor to really finish it up. There is very little in the way of bits and pieces left to do. So
Does this mean we'll be having a driving car soon?
fingers crossed.
Hallelujah.
I'm still waiting for this distributor to get here, so there's not much I can do on getting the car to run until then. So yeah, we'll see where we go from here, because I'm running out of stuff to do.
Plenty to do around the house, Jeff.
Yeah, but these guys don't want to see me doing housework. I don't want to see me doing
Oh,
housework.
housework, that'd be even better. I mean renovations, but I'll take housework.
No, more car stuff. So in any case, that is definitely it for this week.
Hope you're enjoying the show. If you are, please like and subscribe if you haven't already.
And join us on Patreon if you want to watch these videos a day earlier than everybody else. But as it is, that's it for this week, and I'll try and work out what I'm going to be doing next week, because I'm running out of stuff to do.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
Hey, guys. Trying to... Oh, I'm in a bit of trouble today. Larger cylinder bores. And some smaller. No.